How can you get an academic book contract? Stick around and find out the 5 key ways today on Navigating Academia. Welcome to Navigating Academia, your leading source for guidance on how to advance your career in academia. As always, I appreciate the love, so please do like and share this video with your colleagues, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell, and comment below. You can follow me at the social media sites below. So, today we're going to be discussing how do you get an academic book contract? This was something that I always wondered. When I was in graduate school, it seemed like so many of the individuals that I was working with were actively pursuing this goal, or already seemed to have a dozen books, it seemed like, already under their belt. Learning to publish in peer-reviewed journals is difficult enough, but how can you take those exact same writing skills that you've developed in that segment of your career and apply it to actually writing book chapters or editing a book itself? This is a very difficult process to be able to understand because usually there's nobody to really lead you through this process. So today we're going to be discussing 5 key ways that you can go about getting a book contract of your own. Option number 1, let colleagues know that you're interested in co-authoring or co-editing a book if the opportunity arises. This is perhaps the easiest way to get involved as a co-author or a co-editor on a book. Now, using this option, you're not going to be the first author or first editor on the book. However, working, at least for your first book, with an experienced author or editor has a number of different benefits. The first, of course, is that you can get active mentorship insofar as the process and know what to do so that on the second or third go-around, you can really take the reins and take the lead. The second is that you're going to learn quite a bit about the different roles of different editors and different authors on a book. Not everybody does the same thing. A lot of people think, for example, that all co-authors on a book are going to assist in writing every single chapter, or all editors on a book, on an edited edition, are going to read through and give suggestions to each book chapter's set of authors, and that's simply not the case. But how do you actually go about doing this? A lot of people feel very nervous because they think to themselves, God, you know, it's kind of arrogant. What if I'm just going to go to my colleagues, and especially the ones who have books under their belt are usually a bit more senior than yourself. Am I just supposed to go to them and say, hey, listen, this is a bit out of nowhere, but I'm really interested in getting involved in academic publishing when it comes to books. So if you're thinking about writing or editing one, you know, please keep me in mind. A lot of people think that that may be a little bit arrogant, that you're going to come across poorly, but always remember, it's not what you say, it's always how you say it. Making sure that you're couching this in terms of letting the other individual know that you really want to work hard on this, that you're very dedicated, and even giving some suggestions in terms of different topics for books themselves, different potential publishers, and also compliments never hurt. Right? Make sure that at the end of the day, you're teaming up with co-authors or co-editors who you like, who you trust, and who at the end of the day are actually going to get the job done, instead of simply talking about how great a certain idea for a book would actually be. Now, to give you a practical example, this is actually how I got my first co-authorship on my first book, which was published in 2008. This book is Approaches to Behavior in Classroom Management, Integrating Discipline and Care, which I co-authored with 2 amazing colleagues of mine, Dr. George Scarlett and Dr. Iris Chin-Ponte. This book was really the first time I dipped my toes in terms of academic publishing of any kind. This was before I even focused on publishing peer-reviewed papers, the writing style for which, of course, is very different than writing book chapters. But what ended up happening here, how in the world did I get this opportunity? Well, I remember it very clearly. I was at Tufts University at the time. I was an undergraduate student. And what happened was that I went to a seminar which had a bunch of different professors from the Department of Child Development there. And individuals were getting up and talking about different projects that they were working on that students, both undergraduate, graduate, and postdoctoral, could get involved with. And at the end of the day, most people were choosing individual research projects. And Professor Scarlett got up, he explained the book project that he had in his mind, he talked about working with a leading academic publisher, which is Sage, and said if anybody wants to get involved, to let him know. And I was shocked that nobody was going up to Professor Scarlett after this was happening. And later when I talked to some fellow students, they were all saying, you know, it was a little bit intimidating to hear about the project he was working on. I felt like I wasn't ready, I felt like I wasn't prepared, but at the end of the day for me, this seemed really exciting. So I went up and I talked to him, and at the end of the day I did an independent study with him over the summer. And at first he was just doing background research, a little bit of writing. I obviously was not a co-author on the book. The co-authors, and at the time there were more than 2 others, they were very, very talented, experts in their field, and real go-getters as well. What happened is that for one reason or another, they left the department, they graduated, they simply didn't have the time. They started to drop off the project. And as that happened, I had the incredible opportunity to step up and start writing more and more, to the point where writing individual paragraphs became writing sections. Those sections turned into chapters with the active guidance and supervision of the first 2 authors on the book. In the end, I wrote a little bit under 1/3 of the book, and it was a huge blessing that the first 2 authors decided to make me a full co-author on the book. Now, this was a huge challenge for me. I was somebody who really loved to write, but when it came to this depth of research, I was burning that candle at both ends, as you guys can imagine. And especially for your first endeavor, please understand that this is going to be an absurd amount of work. This isn't something where usually you wake up one day, say, I'm going to write a book, and then it's done in a few months. This is something that's going to take a minimum of 1 year, usually 2 to 3 years to actually take from conception all the way through to publication. So just be ready for an arduous process, especially if this is your first go-around, okay? But remember, the key here is nobody is going to be as big of an advocate for your career as yourself. Be respectful, be conscientious of how you come across, and really ask for what you want. This is something that people don't do enough of, but if you're straightforward and respectful, and you're really asking for help, I have found that very rarely will you be turned away by colleagues. A lot of people think that at the end of the day, people want you to do as well as them, but not any better, right? And I have found that with the right colleagues, you can do amazing, amazing things and get their help. Option number 2, approach a book series editor at an association in your field. Let's say that you're in a field like I was, which was forensic mental health, forensic psychology, forensic psychiatry, forensic counseling, forensic social work, so on and so forth. That was my field. I'm sure you guys are in all kinds of different fields. But whatever the field is, I'm pretty confident that there's going to be at least one association which, let's say, puts on an annual conference, publishes a weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annual journal. And usually, these associations, not always, have some kind of an arrangement with a given academic publisher, usually a very well-respected one, keep in mind, right? Not an independent publisher from a small publishing house, but usually one of the big dogs, the Sages, the Wileys, the Pearsons, Blackwell, you name it, right? These are the ones that you actually want to publish with. You don't want to publish with some tiny publishing house that's going to do nothing in terms of the distribution of the book, and where when people learn who the publisher is, they're going to say, I'm just not very impressed by that. So at the end of the day, this is a great opportunity for you to be able to not only network in your field, because usually the association has this relationship and assigns an individual in that association to be what's referred to as the book series editor. And this individual is usually a leader in the field or somebody who's going to become a leader, and they want to take that active role in the association and work their way up the ranks if they're not already on the top. okay? So this is really key, is to be able to have a rock-solid proposal, an idea of the book that you want to write or the book that you want to edit. Make sure that you have a formal proposal prepared, and we can talk a little bit about how to be able to develop one of these proposals in a one-on-one consultation if you would like. I'll tell you how to get in touch with me at the end of this video. And after you have that developed, simply go to the conference or even go to the university or the institution where that book series editor is stationed. Yeah, it's going to cost a little bit of money, but at the end of the day, it's worth it to be able to advance your career. Write to whoever the book series editor is, request a meeting, and let them know that you're interested in chatting about an exciting idea for a potential contribution to the book series. Take a look. Usually it's on the website of the association or the website of the publisher, which has a subpage on that association's book series, and make sure that there's something there, right, in that book series that you can identify as being something similar to, or at least in the same vein as the book that you want to publish. Obviously, you don't want to publish something that's going to compete with something that's already in the book series, but it's also the case where you want to make sure that, your book isn't on, let's say, interior decorating, and you're going to a forensic psychology association book series to be able to try to get that thing published, right? So make sure that you're staying in your lane in that regard. Make sure that you're knowledgeable about the book series as well, so that you can speak intelligibly not only about your book itself, right, but also about the process of getting it published in that series. And the best way to do that is preparation, preparation, preparation. And also preparing to be able to meet whoever that book series editor is. Go on to Google Scholar, ResearchGate, academia.edu, read some of their most recent papers so that you can get a sense of who they are, as well as a sense of what they're passionate about, because it could be that your book topic area is exactly what they're interested in, and they could get really passionate about it. And if not, you can make comparisons between what you want to do and things that they've either done in the past or projects that they've been involved with. Approach that book series editor, preferably in a one-on-one, relaxed meeting, in a relaxed location, a coffee shop, in their office, make them very comfortable. It's really not necessary to take them to dinner or anything like that, right? That's a little bit too formal, okay? And it's going to take a little bit too long. You want to keep this meeting to maybe half an hour to an hour, that first initial meeting, and discuss with them the project. Tell them that you've got a formal proposal planned that you're happy to send to them, and then work with that book series editor. If you're a young scholar, or you're somebody who's maybe newer to academia, even if you're mid-career or even late career, but you're not involved with publishing or have never done a book before, it can be intimidating, and you may even be afraid to ask for this kind of a meeting. But don't be intimidated. Everybody had to start somewhere. I always like to tell the story about me and one of my best friends. His name is Ty. Him and I, when we were teenagers, we loved to go rock climbing, indoor rock climbing. And the one day we were standing there and we were looking up at this massive rock climbing wall, and we were planning, right? And we said, okay, first, we're going to go over here, then over here. Look at that big grip. We're going to grab onto that. We're standing there plotting everything. And at the same time, this little boy, who could have been no taller than my hip, came over, hooked in, and by the time that we realized that he was there, this kid was already 3/4 of the way up this wall. Now, what I mean by this story is sometimes you just gotta get started. You may not have to have the perfect plan, know exactly what you're gonna do, or even how you're gonna get it done, but you gotta get on that wall and just get started somewhere. You're gonna find that you're gonna have to pivot so many times in the process of pitching, writing, or editing, and subsequently publishing a book. So don't think that you have to have everything planned out, because you're just going to set yourself up for a little bit of frustration down the road. But I promise that if you just get started, great things can happen. Option 3, approach an action editor at a leading publisher in your field. Go to Google Books. Take a look at what other books there are in your field. This is what I would always do in the field of forensic psychology or forensic mental health at large. Take a look at who's publishing what and where. What are the big publishers that are interested in this kind of work? Just because you have a big academic publisher does not mean that they're necessarily going to be interested in your specific niche in your field. So it's important to identify the biggest name publishers who are actually interested in your field, right? right? So if you're not going to take something like option 2, where you're going to go to a book series editor at an association, which you don't have to do, the next best thing to do is to identify who the action editor is at one of those leading publishers who's actively looking at books in your field. Now, you want to see how recently they published these books, because it's very possible that maybe your favorite text came out 10 years ago from a given publisher, and when you contact that publisher, they'll say, we're really into that for a time, but these days it's not our thing. And that's okay, but it's important to find that information out. So take a look for books that were published in the last 5 years. Make sure that when you're filtering search engines, you just set that time period to make sure that you're only going to identify books in your niche, in your field, within that time period. Now, once you know who those editors are, you have 2 options. The first one is to directly call, email, even fax individuals who are maybe just the general services or contact information there who are at that publisher, or simply call, and the magic phrase is, "I'm not quite sure who to talk to." This is a phrase that a lot of people think is going to make them sound a little bit dumb, but on the contrary, people want to help. You'll be surprised. So simply when calling, you can say something along the lines of, "Hi there, my name is Dr. Jay Singh. I'm in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Pennsylvania. I wasn't quite sure who the right person would be to talk to, but I'm looking for an action editor in the field of whatever, psychology, philosophy, sociology, biology, whatever it is." And simply start that process of running down the rabbit hole, because that's really what it is. If you don't know who the right person is to talk to, it's going to take you some time. But if you're really dedicated to this process, you'll end up finding the right person. If you end up going to academic conferences, especially the bigger ones in your field, where there are individuals who are going to be vendors from different publishers there, you can also just go up to them and ask, "Hey, listen, I have a really interesting book project and I'd love to talk to an action editor about it. Could you give me some recommendations?" And give them a card, try to get their contact information. You could even tell them a little bit about your idea to be able to get a solid handle on who's the right person that you should be approaching and talking to in that field, right? So for that publisher. And once you identify that person, you can set up a formal call and have that professional discussion. Even better than a phone call is some sort of a video call. I find it to be a lot more personal. You can use more of your nonverbals rather than just your intonation and your choice of words. You can get that facial affect, that gestural affect. I find that you can build a lot more rapport with individuals by doing that. Again, you could even go and see them in person, but when it comes to this, I would not recommend it in terms of flying out to wherever the publisher is located. It's just not necessary like it may be for option number 2. So when approaching an action editor as well, one of the best things you can do is identify whether or not anybody who has written those books in the last 5 years is a buddy of yours. Are you connected with those individuals in some way? Even if there's more than 1 degree of separation. Let's say that this individual over here published that book. You don't know them, but you know that they recently co-authored a paper with someone you do know. Well, contact that individual and get a formal introduction. Set up a phone call and talk to them about their experience with that publisher. Now, once you're on the line with them, once you actually have that rapport established with the person who has this relationship with the action editor, what I always say is that let's say that you see a cute individual at a bar and you want to go and approach them. If you go up and say, "Hi there, my name is Jay Singh, and let me tell you a little bit about myself," it can end up sounding a little bit arrogant or that you're coming on too strong. A better option is that if a friend goes over the bar for you, right, and talks to the individual that you're interested in and says, "Hey, listen, I know this great guy, his name is Jay, and I would love to introduce you to him. Here's some cool things about him. Do you mind if I bring him over?" That could go significantly better, because when you go over, the individual has already had higher value demonstrated for them, and because of that, you can simply go over and have a much more natural conversation without having to kind of pump yourself up. Same thing when it comes to this publishing strategy. Approach this action editor through a friend or a mutual colleague, and at the end of the day, they're already going to know that you're an individual that they want to be linked up with, especially if that action editor has already worked with someone and that book is doing well. If they recommend somebody else, that's going to have a lot more cachet. Option number 4 is to self-publish. Now, this is kind of a contentious issue. If you're writing a book that is super niche, maybe it's a handbook on a very specific kind of treatment, maybe even something that you came up with, a certain kind of treatment, intervention, etc. if you're in the field of healthcare, or if you're in philosophy or some other field, a theory that you've come up with, if you're in mathematics, a set of proofs that you're interested in speaking about or publishing, etc. It may be really difficult to find a publisher, especially an academic publisher, who's interested in working with you. Now, there are these tiny publishing houses that I get emails from all the time saying, hey, listen, we've seen that you've published some books in the past. Why don't you just come and publish a book for us? But the issue is that many times they charge you to publish the book, or if they do publish it, they're not going to put out, let's say, 1,000 copies and see how it does. They're not going to attend conferences on your behalf, etc. You may think it's cool because they may post it on something like Barnes & Noble or Amazon, but that's very easy to do at the end of the day, okay? It's really not something where self-publishing or working with a tiny academic publisher is going to really advance your career. In some cases, incredibly rarely, a major academic publisher will see a self-published book and say, hey, this seems to be doing really well. We're interested in picking this up and bringing it to a much broader audience and putting the resources behind it to get it out there to the general populace of academics in a way that self-publishing and kind of marketing yourself never really could. Now, when it comes to self-publishing books, there are a lot of different options. Keep in mind that usually you'll have to pay extra for things like cover design if you would like one. You'll have to pay money for copy editing if you want any. I can't tell you the number of self-published books that I've picked up randomly in colleagues' offices and taken a look through, and there's periods in the wrong places. They've have really poor grammar, so on and so forth. There's spacing issues. It looks very unprofessional. So if you're going to self-publish, it really is worth hiring a copy editor, having some colleagues proofread if they're willing to. That is a really good thing to do. So in my professional opinion and expertise and experience, I've found that self-publishing books doesn't really help your career that much. People who say, I'm a published author, I've got 2 books out, that sounds very impressive, but if you're in the field of academia and people know that self-publishing is very different than securing a contract, it can be really difficult once people see that, they find out that they're self-published books. People can get pretty frustrated actually when they find that out because it's something that it decreases your profile once they find that information out. So just be wary of that. It's something that a lot of people disagree on, and I completely respect that. I've read a few self-published books that are absolutely fantastic. So I would say that those tend to be the exception to the rule, but again, that's just my personal opinion. Now, finally, we move on to option number 5. Option number 5 is just don't seek out publishing a book. A lot of people think that they're going to become multimillionaires or significantly supplement their annual revenue by publishing a book with an academic publisher. I had a mentor of mine who once told me, at the end of the day, you don't publish books to make money. And that is incredibly true. I have colleagues who've published 12 books, and off of those 12 books, the royalties that they're getting every single year is maybe $10,000, right? Every now and again, you've got, let's say, a textbook that does phenomenally well, but usually when it comes to, let's say, handbooks or books in specific niches where courses may use them, but those aren't Psych 101 courses, those are graduate level seminars or undergraduate courses that are rarely taught because they're only taught by one individual who may leave the university at any given time. Really, you're not going to be making bank on these books, okay? So the reason that you publish the books, though, is 2 things. Number 1 is that it represents a significant milestone in your career. It is a big deal. Number 2 is that it's your Everest. It's academic Everest doing your first book. It's something that if you don't have experience with, it's just going to really put you through the ringer. However, if the book is properly organized, is written nice and slowly in terms of really thinking about what you're doing and not trying to rush the process, it can be something that can be a career-defining or even life-defining moment for you. So really, if you're interested in publishing a book, don't lead with the idea that you're going to become a millionaire or get a ton of money out of this process. Usually the commission that you're going to get is very small anyway, and especially if you have co-editors or co-authors, it's just going to get smaller. However, it can be a significant boost to your career. It looks great on your resume or CV. When you go places, you can certainly self-market the book or even bring copies of the book for you, give them out to different libraries at major institutions, at major libraries. This can be a great boost to be able to say that your book is in, you know, Harvard Law School's library, whatever it is. It gives you something to say, more or less. But just don't think that this is something that you're going to take all this time, but you're going to really kind of make that money back. So if you're focused on growing your revenue as an academic, this is really not the best way to do it. There's also a variety of different book awards that you could apply for. However, these book awards sometimes are not given out annually, and it can certainly be something where there's quite a bit of competition. And sometimes if you don't have a really big co-author that's attached, due to the bureaucracy and clicks in a field, it can be something where your odds of getting those awards can be very, very low. That said, if you're an early career professional, it can certainly help you out quite a bit if you want to apply for an early career professional award. So again, pros and cons for absolutely everything. Alright y'all, thank you so much for watching. I want to hear from you in the comments below. Are you thinking of publishing a book in academia? And if so, which of these 5 strategies do you think is going to work the best for you? Don't forget to like and share this video with your colleagues, subscribe, and follow us on social media. If you're interested in one-on-one career mentoring, set a consultation call with me and we can discuss your unique case. Simply send me a message at the website below. Have a great day, and remember to get out there, take chances, and be your best self. Signing off. Thank you so much for stopping by, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here as always. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more in this series on navigating academia, please click on one of these links over here to be able to view more original content. I hope to see you there.